The darkest truth about human nature is this: people rarely respect what they can have without effort. It isn't because they are cruel. It isn't because they secretly want to hurt you. It's because the human mind is programmed to assign greater value to what feels limited, difficult to obtain, or possible to lose. The moment your time, attention, loyalty, and energy become available to everyone without conditions, your value quietly begins to disappear in their eyes. This is the dark psychology of value. People don't decide to respect or disrespect you overnight. They unconsciously study how you treat yourself first, and then they simply follow your example. Most people spend their lives trying to earn respect by giving more. They become available whenever someone calls. They say yes when they desperately want to say no. They over-explain every decision, over-deliver every favor, and over-sacrifice their own priorities just to avoid disappointing others. They believe this generosity will make people appreciate them. But psychology often produces the opposite result. Every time you repeatedly place someone else's needs above your own, you silently communicate one dangerous message: my value is always available. And when something appears unlimited, the human mind stops treating it as precious. Robert Greene repeatedly demonstrates that power begins with perception. Before people respect your abilities, they judge your standards. Before they admire your success, they observe how easily your attention can be obtained. If they discover that a little praise can control you, they will use praise. If they discover that guilt can control you, they will use guilt. If they realize you fear rejection more than you value yourself, they don't even need to manipulate you. You will manipulate yourself. This is why protecting your value is not arrogance. It is psychological self-defense. Think about the people who are constantly taken for granted. They answer every message within seconds. They rearrange their schedules for everyone else. They forgive repeated disrespect without consequences. They keep giving chances to people who have done nothing to deserve them. At first, others may call them kind, but over time, kindness without boundaries slowly transforms into predictability. Predictability becomes expectation. Expectation becomes entitlement. Eventually, people stop asking whether they deserve your time because they assume they already own it. Now imagine someone who operates differently. They are respectful, but they are selective. They keep their word, yet they refuse to abandon their own priorities simply to gain approval. They help people because they choose to, not because they fear being disliked. Their attention is intentional, not automatic. Their time is protected because they understand it is one of the few resources they can never replace. Without raising their voice or demanding respect, they create an entirely different psychological effect. People naturally become more careful around them because they understand that access to this person's energy is a privilege, not a guarantee. This is where the dark psychology of value becomes impossible to ignore. Human beings instinctively protect what they believe they could lose. The possibility of loss creates appreciation in ways unlimited access never can. When people know you will always be there, regardless of how they treat you, they stop investing in the relationship. But when they realize your presence depends on mutual respect, their behavior begins to change. They think before crossing your boundaries. They become more aware of your time. They stop assuming your loyalty is permanent simply because it has always been available. None of this requires becoming cold, selfish, or manipulative. True value is not created by pretending to be important. It is created by genuinely respecting yourself enough to protect what matters. Your attention is valuable, your energy is valuable, your peace of mind is valuable. And if you constantly trade those things for temporary approval, people unconsciously learn that your value has no price. The moment you stop making that trade, the entire dynamic changes. Never forget that people are always watching your behavior more closely than your words. You can tell the world to respect you, but if your actions constantly communicate desperation for acceptance, they will believe your actions instead. The strongest message you can ever send is not spoken. It is demonstrated every time you refuse to sacrifice your standards just to remain convenient in someone else's life. And once you stop giving your value away for free, the next step is becoming emotionally untouchable, because nothing commands respect faster than a person whose emotions cannot be manipulated. The moment you stop giving your value away for free, people begin searching for another way to influence you. They may no longer control your time as easily, but they will often try to control your emotions instead. This is where the real test begins. Many people protect their schedule, but fail to protect their emotional state. They become upset by criticism, excited by praise, shaken by rejection, and distracted by the opinions of others. Without realizing it, they have simply exchanged one form of dependence for another. The dark psychology of value teaches that true respect is never built on what you own or what you say. It is built on becoming emotionally impossible to manipulate. Robert Greene often reveals that the greatest form of power belongs to the person who remains calm while everyone else is reacting. Human beings naturally look for emotional openings. They observe what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, what flatters your ego, and what causes you to lose control. Once they discover those weaknesses, they no longer need to overpower you physically. They simply pull the right emotional trigger, and you willingly surrender your peace. This is why emotional discipline is not just a personal strength. It is a shield that protects your value from those who wish to control it. Think about how easily people can predict the average person. A little praise makes them overconfident. A small insult ruins their entire day. Being ignored fills them with anxiety. Receiving attention makes them feel important again. Their emotions rise and fall according to someone else's behavior. From the outside, this appears normal, but psychologically, it reveals dependence. The person whose emotions can be controlled is also the person whose decisions can be influenced. And once people recognize that, respect begins to fade because they know exactly how to move you. Now imagine someone completely different. They accept compliments without becoming arrogant. They receive criticism without immediately becoming defensive. They remain composed whether people admire them or underestimate them. Their confidence is not borrowed from public opinion because it was never built there in the first place. Instead, it comes from self-knowledge, discipline, and purpose. This kind of emotional stability creates a powerful psychological effect. People become cautious around individuals they cannot emotionally predict because manipulation depends on predictable reactions. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they must answer every attack against their character. They feel compelled to explain themselves, defend every decision, and prove every accusation wrong. But the more desperately you try to control what others think, the more control you quietly hand over to them. Every explanation signals that their opinion has entered your mind. Every emotional reaction confirms that they have found a way to influence your behavior. Truly powerful people understand that not every opinion deserves a response because not every voice deserves authority over their emotions. This does not mean becoming cold, detached, or incapable of feeling. Emotional discipline is very different from emotional suppression. You still experience disappointment, frustration, and anger. The difference is that you refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You pause before reacting. You observe before speaking. You ask yourself whether the situation truly deserves your energy or whether someone is simply trying to provoke you. That single moment of self-control often protects months or even years of hard-earned respect. There is another psychological principle that few people recognize. Praise can manipulate you just as easily as criticism. Someone who understands your need for approval can flatter you until your judgment disappears. They tell you exactly what you want to hear because they know your ego is easier to influence than your logic. This is why emotionally strong people remain balanced in both success and failure. They appreciate recognition, but they never become dependent on it. They welcome constructive criticism, but they never allow it to define their identity. Their emotional center remains steady regardless of what happens around them. Notice how the most respected individuals rarely rush to react. Their silence is not hesitation, it is calculation. They understand that every emotional response reveals information about them. By remaining calm, they force others to reveal their intentions first. While everyone else is consumed by emotion, they quietly observe patterns, motives, and opportunities. That patience gives them a psychological advantage because they respond from clarity instead of impulse. The dark psychology of value begins to work in your favor. The moment people realize they cannot control you through fear, praise, guilt, or rejection, they begin treating you differently because they understand your emotions are no longer available for manipulation. Respect grows naturally when others recognize that your peace cannot be purchased with compliments or stolen through criticism. Your greatest strength is no longer what you possess. It is the quiet certainty that no one else controls your inner world. And once your emotions become impossible to manipulate, the next step is learning how silence and mystery quietly increase your value without you saying a single word. Once you become emotionally difficult to manipulate, people begin searching for another way to understand you. They observe your words, your habits, your reactions, and your decisions, hoping to predict your next move. This is where most people unknowingly weaken their own value. They reveal everything. They explain every choice, justify every action, and feel compelled to make sure everyone understands them. But the dark psychology of value teaches a different lesson. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to control. The less people have to wonder about you, the less they invest in understanding you. Respect is not created by constantly proving yourself. It grows when your actions carry enough weight that your words no longer need to. Robert Greene often emphasizes that mystery has always been one of the strongest forms of influence. Throughout history, powerful individuals understood that complete transparency rarely inspires fascination. Human beings are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully explain. The unknown captures attention because the mind instinctively tries to solve what remains incomplete. This is why people often remember the person who spoke with purpose more than the one who never stopped talking. Silence leaves room for imagination, and imagination is often stronger than certainty. Think about someone who constantly explains themselves. They defend every rumor, respond to every criticism, announce every future plan, and reveal every personal thought before anyone even asks. At first, this may appear honest, but psychologically it creates the impression that they desperately need others to understand and approve of them. The more they speak, the more information they give away. Soon, people know exactly what motivates them, what frightens them, what excites them, and what controls them. Predictability becomes their greatest weakness because anyone who understands their emotional patterns can influence their behavior. Now compare that with someone who chooses their words carefully. They are not secretive or dishonest. They simply understand that not every thought requires an audience. They let their work speak before their promises. They allow results to answer questions that explanations never could. When challenged, they remain calm instead of rushing to defend themselves. When misunderstood, they don't panic. They know that time and consistent action reveal character far better than endless arguments. This quiet restraint creates an entirely different psychological effect. People begin paying closer attention because every word carries intention rather than impulse. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing silence with weakness. In reality, silence often communicates confidence. Those who are secure in their value rarely feel pressured to convince everyone else of it. They understand that constant self-promotion can have the opposite effect, making their achievements appear less genuine. There is strength in allowing people to discover your character gradually instead of presenting every accomplishment at once. Human nature values discovery because what we uncover ourselves often feels more meaningful than what is repeatedly advertised to us. There is another reason mystery increases respect. When people cannot completely predict you, they remain mentally engaged. They replay conversations, question their assumptions, and observe your actions more carefully. This is not because you are playing games. It is because uncertainty naturally captures attention. The human mind dislikes unfinished puzzles. The less information people have about your intentions, the more energy they spend trying to understand them. Ironically, saying less often makes your presence